In fact, now after doing all of the work that I've done, if there is an attachment disruption between birth and 3 years old, it's actually much more difficult to neurobiologically heal that than if there's an attachment disruption after 3 years old.
So you want to make an impact. You're thinking about starting a business, sharing your voice. How do women do it that handle motherhood, family, and still chase after those dreams? Well, listen each week as we dive into the stories of women who know. This is Call Me CEO. Welcome back, everyone, to Call Me CEO. This is your host, Camille Walker, and here we share heartwarming, encouraging, amazing stories of women, especially mothers, building businesses. Now, with all of our lives, we come packed with our own stories. We come packed with the things we learn, the things we wish we didn't have to learn, but we learned anyway, and the messages we get along the way that direct us into our purpose and the place where we're meant to be and how we're also supposed to help people around us. And isn't that amazing? And with that comes trauma too. And some of that takes purposeful effort to recover and to put effort into understanding our own path of that recovery. So today I am so thrilled to introduce you to Gabi Ruth, who is a trauma recovery coach. So she's going to help walk us through what does that look like in terms of being a business owner? And what does that mean that you should understand about yourself and what you can do to create the best path forward? So thank you so much, Gabi, for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So tell our audience a bit about you, where you live, your family, and then also what got you into the world of trauma recovery.
Okay, will do. These are some of my favorite questions.
Yay.
I live in Spokane, Washington. I'm a transplant from Denver, Colorado. I have two beautiful children, an 11-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter, and they are my whole world. And in fact, it is because of my son that I got into the work that I do. My son is adopted from Ethiopia. And when he came home, I knew nothing about trauma recovery. I knew I had a trauma history myself, but I thought it was in the past, like a lot of us do. Like, I'm grown, it's behind me, it's not affecting me anymore. And I couldn't have been more wrong
Mm.
because here comes this beautiful little boy who also had a trauma history. And we were just butting heads like crazy. And I knew it was because I was getting triggered from my past stuff. So I dived deep into the world of trauma recovery, not just for my sake, but especially for his sake, to help him learn how to have healthy attachment, to learn how to show up in the world without being afraid, and how to connect together as a family. And from there, that was 10 years ago now. But from there, I just fell in love with the world of trauma recovery. It's beautiful. I think it's a way that we should all be showing up in the world with more kindness and compassion for ourselves and each other. But I owe it to him that I'm in this work and I'm doing this today.
Mm. What a beautiful introduction to this story. I think with all of us, I don't know that I heard the word trauma truly until maybe 5 to 8 years ago, maybe. And now I
Hmm.
feel like it's a word we hear a lot,
Yeah.
which maybe we just called it something different, or maybe we weren't having those conversations. I know we weren't having those conversations as much as we needed to. And
Hmm.
my sister, she adopted her son and he came with so much trauma,
Hmm.
even as an 18-month-old
Yeah.
child, that he didn't understand. She didn't understand. And she will tell you that he was her seventh child.
Hmm.
And the process of learning and healing with him was one of the hardest and most beautiful journeys she had ever done in all of her motherhood. So I can only imagine
Yes.
stepping into that the very first go of,
Yeah.
okay, here we go. How do you even start to unpack that? So what was it for your son that helped you to get to a place of understanding his trauma and healing your own?
Well, really, my son was young too. He was 15 months old, and we
Mm,
had been told like if you get a child that is younger than 3, they're going to be fine. They're not going to remember anything, which
not
couldn't be
true.
more
Yeah.
wrong.
Hmm.
In fact, now after doing all of the work that I've done, if there is an attachment disruption between birth and 3 years old, it's actually much more difficult to neurobiologically heal that than if there's an attachment disruption after 3 years old, because your brain
Mm,
basically learns how to attach and connect to other people between 0 and 3. So if that opportunity isn't there, which it wasn't for him for various reasons, then you are wired basically to be you against the world.
mm,
So it was pretty clear early on, and his story is his to tell, but
hmm.
pretty early on, as I'm sure your sister experienced, there were just some things that were off. And being a first time parent, I was like, what's normal? What's not
Right.
normal? Like, am I crazy? And it took a lot of, honestly, just that mom gut feeling, taking him to different people to try to figure out what was going on, because most
Mm,
people would say, he's fine, he's normal. And I was like, something is not normal. So I went down a rabbit hole of research about adoptees and other parents who had experienced this. And then basically I opened Pandora's box into this world of other parents trying to figure out the same thing, and then learning about secure attachment and how adoptees learn secure attachment, and basically just turning parenting upside down from what a lot of us, like millennials, or I'm an old millennial, we're used to growing up. It's just very, very different. So it's very triggering
mm,
for me as a parent. At first, it was very triggering because it's like everything that I knew in my system was control and discipline. And now I'm being asked to give space and show compassion and be with someone who is doing things that are quote unquote bad. Instead of like putting him in a corner, I would be with him. So
mm.
I mean, the whole process has just been so fascinating and interesting. I think I've lost track of what the actual question was, but that's been what it's looked like to come to this place of understanding like trauma recovery and um, healing from your past.
Yeah. No, I think you answered it really well because it was that warning sign and also that inner knowing of listening to
Hmm.
yourself and saying something's not quite right. And I love
Yeah.
that we are in a place now where there's so many different mediums to promote healing within
Hmm.
ourselves and with our children. I know that music was a big time healer for my nephew,
Mm.
and being in, I know that my sister will tell you, she'll say, I gained, I can't even remember, like 60 to 80 pounds or something with
Mm.
every pregnancy. She's like, but I gained the most with my adopted child because
Oh.
she was just trying to navigate it herself and
Hmm.
figuring out a lot of unknowns. And every child is different. I have 4 children myself, and they do not come the same, and they do
Mm-mm.
not give you a clue when they're babies, can't even talk yet, where a lot of it is guesswork. And so you're
Totally.
just having to kind of navigate and ask questions and reach into your inner knowing, but then also look for resources and mentors. And I love that you did that and you did the work and the research. What a lucky child to come
Mm.
into a home where you care and you love him so deeply that you would do anything to help him to heal. That is so beautiful.
Well, I'm definitely the lucky one. And thank God that I was sent this child
Hmm.
because he's incredibly resilient and he's been so patient with me. Like, we've had to be really, really patient with each other.
Yeah.
It's been a long, years long process to get where we are, but I look at him now and I'm so amazed and grateful for who he is. I'm definitely the lucky one in this
Oh,
scenario.
I love that. And you know
Yeah.
what? At the end of the day, I feel like it's all about growth.
Hmm.
This is going into like a spiritual zone of it, but I really believe that our children have reason to come to us as children, and we have reason
Hmm.
to be their parent to learn very specific lessons. And
Hmm.
so it's very much a team effort of this child accepting and receiving that love, but you also gaining knowledge and patience and understanding and curiosity and growth. Like that's what life is all about. So, in that vein of speaking in that way, what was it about learning about trauma recovery that gave you that inclination that this was a life purpose for you? Because really,
Mm,
that experience with him, like you said, helped guide and direct you into a life purpose that perhaps you wouldn't have known what existed.
yeah. I think I've always been wired to teach people what I know, especially if it's helpful. It's just the way that I am.
Hmm.
Whether that was like helping my sister with math when we were little or helping people learn bigger concepts now as an adult. So for me, like I remember vividly, I was living in Texas at the time, and I went away to an Airbnb in Waco, by Magnolia, like the silos,
Hmm. Hmm.
and for a weekend. And I sat down and I read this book called Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. I had just found out about complex PTSD or CPTSD. And I opened this book and I read it all night. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is me. He's explaining me in these pages. At
Wow.
this point, I was really struggling to try to show up for my son and parent him well because I was so triggered all the time. I was
Mm.
very, very depressed, exhausted, sick, everything that comes from not being able to process the emotions that are trapped inside of your body. So I sat down and I read this book, and I was absolutely amazed because I had never heard someone describe me as clearly as that. I never
Wow.
thought that the way I existed in the world could be described as symptoms. I just thought I was
Interesting.
weird. But
So
basically,
give me an
yeah,
idea. Like, what are these symptoms? Maybe someone's listening that's like, okay, tell me, because what is it?
yeah, definitely. And just to clarify, like complex PTSD means your whole formative years were chaotic. So your normal was not normal, which
Mm.
just completely traumatizes your nervous system, the way you're neurobiologically wired, the way you relate to other people. So one of the symptoms that I remember clearly reading about was when I am with other people, I feel like there's a glass wall between me and them
Mm.
that I can never break through. Like there's always a barrier. And I had always felt like that, but no one had described it like that before.
Interesting. And is
Um,
that because of not feeling a certain connection as a child to your parents? Or like,
it
what is,
could be,
oh, I guess, I mean, it could be a lot of different things, but
yeah.
what did that mean for you? Like, what do you think that helped you to define?
It was more the sense of like, I'm not real. So
Mm.
if you've
Like a
ever heard,
dissociation then.
yeah, like
Okay.
dissociation, or even further than that, you could call depersonalization, where you're kind of just, if no one's actively touching you or talking to you with eye contact, it's like you're invisible. You don't feel like you're real, which is a very common symptom of CPTSD.
Mm.
But I read that and immediately the next week joined a support group for CPTSD, which was amazing. And I started to learn how to heal this, and it blew my mind. I did not
Wow.
know that I could feel so alive, that I could feel present, that I could feel like a valuable human being,
Mm.
and showing up in the world in a new way like that. I was like, everybody needs to know this.
Wow.
Everybody needs to know. And it was around then that I started my entrepreneurial journey. It's been almost 10 years I've been an entrepreneur of some kind,
Hmm.
and realized like, oh, my symptoms are affecting my ability to show up as an entrepreneur. All of that kind of just snowballed into what it's become today, where mostly I'm helping entrepreneurs through their trauma recovery so that they can show up for their business and their family in the way that they want to.
Yeah, that's so powerful. That's amazing. Can you share with us maybe patterns or experiences from your childhood that did you recognize them as being a ripple effect to being in that place of the glass, that feeling of the glass wall? Or like you said, you thought it was way behind you. Like,
Hmm.
how did you know that it needed to be sorted through, or what were the patterns there that you wanted to break?
Yeah, I think I always knew that I didn't feel normal, but I didn't know what normal was supposed to feel like. So I just played pretend all the time, which
Mm.
anyone who's neurodivergent, like if you have,
Mm-hmm.
I also have ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
and women are tend to be very high masking,
Yes.
which masking just means like you show up normal
Yeah.
or what people perceive as normal because that's how you're accepted into society. So I knew that it felt like a lot of energy to just show up normal. But I didn't recognize that the pattern was there or the trick, the effect of what I had experienced as a child was there until I first got married and saw it in a relationship, and then uncovered all of this when my son came home. But some of those things that I experienced as a child were just like volatility. So there was high volatility, especially with my mother, where I never knew if she was going to be raging at me or pleased with me.
Mm.
And that creates a very chaotic attachment style inside of a child. There was also the need to perform constantly, like in order to get attention or praise, I had to perform. So I was always the best at everything that I did. I was the best pianist. I was the best at school. I was the best dancer, like everything that I could possibly do to be the best because that was the only place I felt safe.
Mm.
So those were some of the patterns, and just not being able to express my emotions because it wasn't safe. There was no emotion that was safe besides just happy and content. The only person that was allowed to be angry, upset, or anything like that was my mom.
Mm.
But if I showed up like that, it was like all hell broke loose. So emotions were also very scary, although I'm a deeply emotional person. And I know I've always known that, and I couldn't function. Like I couldn't function in that family without being emotional. But the fact that I was so naturally emotional was what got me into a lot of trouble.
Mm.
Um, but I very much saw the effect of that in my marriage and then with my children, those things come to the surface when you are in intimate relationship with people. And you're
Absolutely.
like, okay, yeah, I should not feel the way that I feel in this situation. This is not normal. I'm overreacting, but actually I now know that what's happening is my nervous system is saying, you're in danger, you're in danger,
Mm-hmm.
fight, flee, do something, when actually that's just signals from the past. It's not from the present.
Interesting. What was it? I'm curious about your family dynamic. Did you have siblings? Like what was your position in the sibling lineup?
Yeah, girl. My therapist would like to use me as some kind of like guinea pig because my family dynamic was very weird. I have an identical twin sister. So
Okay.
that added, she's like still my best friend to this day, but that added another layer of constant competition
Mm-hmm.
because one person was always valued more than the other. And
Mm.
she was more of a peacemaker. I was more of like they call it the scapegoat or the justice oriented person, but we were competing constantly. We were also homeschooled. So we were
Okay.
home all the time
Always
and
together. Yeah.
always together, always with our mom. And I have an older brother who is like literally a genius. So he was just thriving in everything. He went to Harvard Business School, like he's very, very smart. So that was a lot to live up to as well. It was just constant, like trying to grab our place on the totem pole,
Mm-hmm.
basically. But yeah, that was the
So the three
dynamic.
of you.
The
Okay.
three of us.
That is so interesting. You know, I listen to a lot of autobiographies. It's one of my favorite genres.
Mm,
And one common thread that I hear over and over again is entrepreneurs, but more often celebrity,
mm,
is that seek for approval from their parent that they never got. And
yeah.
that thirst and that drive to continually push yourself to be the best because you're almost trying to seek that validation into your adult years forever because
Hmm.
were searching for it and seeking for it so much from your parent. Every time I listen to a celebrity autobiography, I'm like, gosh, it just makes me so grateful for
Yeah.
my life.
Mm,
Even though I don't have all the fame and accolades and money, I'm like, but gosh, I am so lucky that had that. I didn't have that like urgent urge always to have to be
mm,
the best at everything and get that approval and that. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
But and even with that being said, my personality is very much I'm an achiever. I'm
Hmm.
an Enneagram 3. I want to be the best at what I do. So
Yeah.
that definitely is there. But that foundational piece of like the parent giving you approval and love, I just feel so blessed that I had that
Mm,
and that I know that that's such a foundational thing as a mother to give that to your child. Do you feel like those
yes.
are lessons that you've taken into your own motherhood? I would imagine. Yes.
Oh, for sure. Sometimes I just take mental notes of
Hmm.
like how different my kids get to exist in the world. Um, like they were watching some TV show where a kid got in trouble because she got a bad grade and she wasn't able to go to the school dance. And I paused the movie they were watching and I was like, just so you guys know, that will never happen to you. You will
Oh,
never get
yeah.
punished because of a grade. Like, this is not how we're going to work in this family. And it's just so different. They're also very vocal and opinionated, and they
Hmm.
tell me when they're upset with me. They tell me how they feel. And sometimes it honestly brings me to tears. First, because I'm just so glad that they're so
Yeah.
safe. And second, because I'm like, I have no idea what it feels like to be you guys. You
Oh.
have this space that's so beautiful and so safe. And I have no idea. Sometimes I'll ask my daughter, I'm like, what does it feel like to be you?
I've said
I'm
that
just
to
so
my kids
curious.
before. Yeah, like, how does it feel to just be loved so much? Like,
Hmm.
oh, mom.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, I mean, gosh, for you to acknowledge that and to have built through that and to recover and break that pattern,
Mm,
that says a lot about you and your own healing and the acknowledgement that it wasn't perfect, but you took what you had and you made it better, which I applaud you for that, for giving
thank
your children
you.
the gift of that love and that acceptance and that space to be authentically themselves and to be safe. Like that really is so powerful. So,
Mm,
for your own journey, and now we're kind of switching gears into helping other people to do this. What were the steps? You mentioned that you'd been a part of this support group to help you
hmm
identify how to break that glass wall, so to speak, and
hmm
also how to connect and heal from your trauma. What do those steps look like? What did they look like for you? And then how do you help others to achieve that as well?
I love this question. No one's asked me this before.
Really? Yay.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting process. So, yeah, my son came home. I started working on healing stuff specifically for him, realized how triggered I was by the way that I needed to parent him in order to be okay. Went away on that retreat down to Magnolia, read that book, like I said, learned about complex PTSD, and that's really when the world split open for me because I'd never heard of CPTSD before that. So I joined support groups with the CPTSD Foundation. If anyone's looking for information, it's great. They have daily support groups on Zoom. It's
Hmm.
incredible. And there I was able to meet other people who were experiencing what I was experiencing, along with some therapists and coaches who were leading the calls. And those were the people that really inspired me. I find that there's two kinds of people who have trauma history. One who would like to stay stuck in it because it feels safe to them, and
Mm.
the other would like to move forward. And I'm very much the move forward type. So I could sense like there were people in this group. No, like I don't judge them at all. Everyone's journey is their own, but they just stayed in the same place month after month after month. And I was like, that's not who I want to be. I
Mm.
want to break through. So I started looking up different healing modalities and learning about different ways to heal from complex PTSD. I went through a somatic experiencing 4-month intensive. Somatic experiencing is a specific therapeutic modality that uses your body. So everything that I do is somatic work. It gets your body involved because you can't heal your nervous system by just changing your mindset. It's not possible. You have to release the energy that's in your body. So I did that. And then I was also in business. I was doing some network marketing and some sales, and I had written a book. I was doing some speaking gigs and stuff like that. But it was there that I started to incorporate those skills into my businesses because otherwise I would like hyper focus, work my butt off for a couple of months and then completely burn out. And then I would feel like a total failure, a total fake, so much shame. And that spiral
Mm,
would go over and over and over again. And with the somatic experiencing and learning these different healing modalities, I realized, oh, I am acting this way because I'm responding in an unhealthy way to what the signals my nervous system is sending me. So I started incorporating some of these things into my business. And then I would see other women who were struggling with the same things. And I would just offer them what I had learned both through parenting and through incorporating some of these trauma-informed modalities into my business. And from there, I mean, I went into therapy. I've been in therapy for years. I will never stop. I'm with a somatic based therapist as well, which is really important for anyone with PTSD or complex PTSD. Um, and a couple of years ago, I would say probably 3 years ago, people started seeking me out for this specific information. And I realized, you know what? I have a lot to offer in this space. I had kind of avoided it because I didn't want to work with trauma survivors.
mm.
I didn't want to work with needy people, like, but that's where this special niche came in, was because I realized a lot of female entrepreneurs are trauma survivors, but they're the ones who are trying to really make something out of their lives. Unfortunately, they don't always know how. So they get stuck, burned out, they hurt themselves in the process, or they feel a lot of shame. So that's when I developed, about a year and a half ago, I developed an entire curriculum specifically to walk through what it looks like to regulate your nervous system and heal from trauma as an entrepreneur. And yeah, those are the steps that have brought me here. So now I have a 12-week program. It's one-on-one. It's 12 weeks, but we walk through nervous system regulation and trauma recovery and help you show up better in your business and in your family.
That's so powerful. I've seen ads on Facebook where it's showing somatic healing, and it's a lot of like, I would say, modified yoga poses, almost
Yeah.
like how would you describe it? I mean, it seemed like the position that I think of specifically is almost like someone laying on their stomach with their legs in a frog position. Yes, that's a good description of that. And it's almost like to release and just to allow your body to process in
Mhm.
different ways, but through positions with your body. Is that a good description, or how would you define it?
That is one type of somatic healing. That is
Okay.
not what I do
Okay. So what do
personally.
you do?
So when you say somatic, it just means your body gets involved.
Hmm.
So for me, I do a lot of, at first, we learn a lot of just basic grounding techniques.
Okay.
We learn how to tune into what do you feel in your body and where do you feel it and how do you release that specific energy. It could be as easy as doing like a loud sigh and lifting your shoulders like, or taking a walk, or doing like, there's like these buzzing kind of meditations that you can do that just releases vibration in your body to help your
Mm-hmm.
vagus nerve, which is the nerve that regulates your nervous system. It helps your vagus nerve to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
Some things like even just looking over your shoulder sends a signal to your vagus nerve like you're not being chased if you're feeling panicky.
Interesting. Okay.
But then in the healing space, I do something called lifespan integration, and that is a different kind of somatic work that's similar to EMDR, if you've heard of
Mm-hmm.
EMDR therapy, which uses eye movement or
Mm-hmm.
tapping. That's the somatic space of EMDR. The way that lifespan integration is similar is you go through your lifespan and you notice trigger points and you just notice where it is in your body. And you kind of visit that space over and over again. You squeeze into a fidget or a pillow or into the floor to release those feelings when you hit that point in your timeline. And over repetition and time, it starts to decrease the actual trigger inside of your body.
Hmm.
So it looks different than like somatic yoga, which is a thing, or somatic workouts, which is also a thing. Those are great, but that's not really the work that I do. I do get your body involved, but it looks very different than like doing poses or things like that.
Okay. That's interesting because it is, I like that you shared those different modalities because I think there are so many different ways of doing things. It's hard. I've had people on the show before who have talked about tapping and yoga and
Hmm.
breathing and, sound therapy or different things like that. And all of them hold space for recovery. And so
Hmm.
I've never heard of the looking behind you to see if you're being chased. That's really interesting. So when
Yeah.
you were learning about somatic healing and the breathing and the buzzing and the looking around, where did you find your resources for that?
On Instagram, actually.
Okay,
I
cool.
was just, I taught the algorithm what I was looking for, and I
Yes,
ended
that's
up
very real.
finding my coach, Sarah Baldwin, which I recommend everyone follow her. But she ended up being my coach. She's one of the best somatic experiencing practitioners in the country.
Hmm.
And I was able to work with her. And basically, through her and the other people on Instagram, I found out about all of these other different things. Instagram's a great place to
TikTok
find
too.
resources.
I
Yeah,
feel like
definitely.
the algorithm, I mean, it's cursed in a way that like it can suck you into a point where you are scrolling without realizing how much his time is going. But
Hmm.
if you use it as a resource for education, you can learn so much, especially when you have
Yes.
such a niche discovery. I think that's really powerful. Would you say that your research and now directing other people and going through this process of regulating themselves and then healing the root. Talk to me about healing the root and how that has set you apart and made you change, help change people's lives. Like that's so
Yeah.
powerful.
Thank you. Well, it's really cool because what I start with the first few weeks of work is learning like what is my nervous system?
Hmm.
What does it do? How does it make me feel? And what does safety actually feel like in my body? What is it supposed to feel like? Because a lot of us haven't learned this stuff. We don't have language for it. Like we can say, I feel
Yeah.
anxious, but we don't have language for what is actually going on physiologically in my body.
Hmm.
So we go over that first. So you have a really clear understanding of like, oh, this is what's happening in my brain and my body when I feel this way. And this is how I can move towards what I call climbing up the ladder into a space where I feel clear-headed and safe and confident.
Mm.
So that's where we start, but that starts to uncover patterns. So some people will see like I am depressed a lot, especially when I'm doing XYZ, or I'm anxious every single time I sit down to write an email. So we'll start to see the patterns. And then we move into story work, which is that lifespan work I was talking about,
Hmm.
which gets to like, what's the first time or the first couple of times you felt that way in your body? Like, remember what you were saying about sitting down to write the email? That's not actually threatening, but your body feels it's threatening. So, what felt like that when you were a child or a teenager? And usually, even just saying that question in itself, people can think of like, oh, yeah, there was this one time with my mom when this happened, and I felt that in my body. But that is how we know that there's a root there of just hurt,
Hmm.
pain, wounding, and it wired your brain to respond to similar situations in the same way, where it's like, I need to protect you from this ever happening to you again. I always have people like envision their nervous system as a child. So it's almost like if a child is feeling panicked or worried or scared, and you as the adult, like you can see everything is fine. Everything's going to be okay. You're not going to, unless you aren't very nice, you're not going to say, like, it's fine, get over it. Like, I don't care how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You'll hold them by the hand and say, here, look at that. Look at that. Here's what's going to happen. Walk them through it. That's exactly how we need to treat our nervous systems,
Mm-hmm.
is showing them something new. But it's by healing that root that the triggers become less frequent, where understanding how to regulate, you can regulate when you're triggered or when you become anxious, frozen, depressed, panicked, whatever. You can regulate through it. But as you heal and go to that next level deeper, you'll find you can walk into situations that used to trigger you and they don't trigger you at all anymore. And that's the difference. You can actually feel more whole, you feel more present, and you feel more capable of just living your life without getting activated all the time.
That's really powerful. And where you're talking with entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, mompreneurs all of the time, what would you say is some of the strongest transformations you've seen as far as
Mm,
maybe regulating or balancing out their lives or creating more productivity in their business?
yeah, I've seen a whole spectrum of things. Some of the wins are purely personal,
Hmm.
which is life transformational in itself.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
there are some women that I've worked with, they remember and share stories that they've never shared before. And just releasing themselves from that liberates them to feel more excited, awake, and alive in their life. Like,
Mm.
what's better than that?
Yeah. Like opening
um,
up a cage with this secret
yeah.
or this weight. Yeah.
And you can see it on their faces like, oh, I'm a valuable human. They show up with more confidence. They show up realizing that they have value, that what they do matters. It's
Hmm.
so beautiful. But along those same lines, I see a lot of times like women who want to expand their business or increase their prices, and they can't. Like it totally freaks them out. Physically they freeze. They can't take that step forward. And so when they do this healing work, understand their value, feel safe in their own bodies, they can then move into space. So I have one friend who completely transformed her business from one style of coaching to another style that was more her passion. And she's just blowing up right now. Like
Wow.
it's so cool to see you were right all along. Like your intuition was saying go this way, but you just couldn't
Mm.
do it because you were stuck with these traumatic bonds, basically. So that is one. I have seen a friend who not only left her toxic narcissistic marriage, which I don't like encourage people to leave relationships, but she just realized like I'm capable of doing this and then go into starting her own design business. So like it's just really it's liberation all around. People
Yeah.
just freed up to do what they're really called to do. On a practical level, I've seen repeatedly people be able to increase their prices or be able to show up consistently in ways that they haven't. People be able to show their faces on social media. I've had a lot of clients who have been afraid to like be seen.
Hmm.
So now, they can show up, make a reel without it taking 3 hours. I've had clients who they wouldn't make reels because it would take them 3 to 4 hours just to make a 20-second reel of themselves talking because of the insecurity and fear. So now to be able to film and post and just show up authentically as themselves, all of those are extremely effective in your business. So yeah,
That's
broad
awesome.
spectrum of stuff. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, this has been absolutely incredible. I've loved it's gotten my wheels thinking not only about business, but also my children, and which
Mm,
I would love to look into that more with somatic healing. I think that's so powerful. Where we live in a world where pushes, we have a lot of the pharmaceutical agenda. I wish, and I'm so
mm.
glad the conversation is going more towards what is it that we can heal within our bodies And
Yeah.
I believe in medication. Don't take that the wrong way, but that there are so many new resources that just were not available
Hmm.
5, 10, 15 years ago, which is
Yeah.
really cool. And
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you for bringing that into the world. So thank you so
Thank
much, Gabi, for
you.
doing that and for being you and bringing that to the world. It's amazing.
Well, thanks for this conversation today. It's been great.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, I ask all of my guests the same two questions. The first is, what are you reading, watching, or listening to? And the second is a motherhood moment you would like to share.
So, ADHD brain, I tend to be reading a lot of different things at the
Yeah.
same time, but I'll focus on what I'm listening to because it might take you by surprise. I am listening to Up and Vanished. It's a true crime podcast.
Ooh,
I
okay.
I believe very strongly in ethical true crime. So there are
Mm-hmm.
some podcasts that will feature the villain, and I don't like
Mm.
those because it
Yeah.
creates fame for the villain and it creates more victimization for the victims.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the podcasts that the story is based around helping the victims and their families.
Cool.
So it feels very trauma informed. It's also just really interesting. So that's what I'm
Yes.
listening to right now, steadily on a regular basis. Um, and a motherhood moment. That was the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say one from the other day because it was adorable and hilarious. If you have kids, they've probably seen Rise of Red, like the new Descendants movie.
Yes.
And my daughter is obsessed with it and she loves to dance. So she learned the red dance.
Cute.
And we went to the mall the other day. There was a Halloween party at the mall downtown in our city. So my daughter was dressed up as Hermione and my son was dressed up as Spider-Man. And she was like no fear at all. Stood in front of this big pumpkin tower and was like, film me doing the red dance, mom. So she starts singing
Girl,
it and dancing in front of the
cute.
pumpkins. And here comes Spider-Man, like the full mask, everything, jumps in next to her and starts dancing right next to her. And they did it together. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Oh.
my children are so cute.
Oh, that
So
is adorable.
yeah,
I
it made
love
me
that
really
he
happy.
jumped in and danced with her.
Yeah, she taught him the dance, so he
Oh,
joined in.
cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the moments that you want to remember forever. I love that you
Hmm.
have it on camera and that she
Yes.
wanted you to film because at some point
Yes.
your daughter will say, Mom, stop filming me
Yeah,
because that's what's
probably.
happening to me.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Well, this has been so great. Please tell our audience where they can find you online to get more
Yeah.
resources. Yeah,
We can follow me on Instagram. My handle is Gabi Ruth, Gabiruth. I also have a website, gabiruth.com. I'm on TikTok and Facebook and stuff too, but my favorite space is Instagram and my website. So those are the best places to find me.
perfect. Well, thank you so much. And for
Thank
everyone
you.
listening, thank you for tuning in. I hope that you have taken something with you today that is transforming your life for the better. And if it has, please leave us a 5-star rating and review and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. It is through episodes like this of women showing up authentically and sharing their light and their journey that inspires others to do the same. So thank you for being a support of that. And I can't wait for you to be with us next week. Hey, CEOs, thank you so much for spending your time with me. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please let me know in a comment and a 5-star review. You could have the chance of being a featured review on an upcoming episode. Continue the conversation on Instagram at Call Me CEO Podcast. And remember, you are the boss.